I'm Janet Estervig from Attainment Company, and I'm here to introduce our newest product, Pre-Employment Transition Solution, or Pre-ETS. It follows the 5 required activities as listed under Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act, or WIOA. We put together a resource for classroom teachers and instructors of Pre-ETS that will meet all of the requirements under WIOA for Pre-ETS. I come to this curriculum with 25 years of experience as a supported employment provider and as a policymaker at the Department of Health Services with implementation of WIOA. The co-author is Whitney Fowler, who was a transition and special education high school teacher and has a vast amount of experience working with students in the classroom and in the community teaching work skills. This curriculum includes a great deal of practical resources directly from the experience of a classroom teacher and someone who placed many people with disabilities into jobs in the community. This webinar will be reviewing the Pre-ETS Solution curriculum, how it is used, and how it's organized. We're following IDEA. The idea here is that we want all students to have additional education on employment and independent living. All students should also have transition planning starting as young as 14. WIOA is in conjunction with this concept of IDEA and bringing together schools and vocational rehabilitation. So why is it important? Well, it was signed into law in 2014, and it does look at major changes with the vocational rehabilitation laws and programs, but the one that deals directly with Pre-ETS, Pre-Employment Transition Services, is the Title IV. In this title, it talks about the importance of bringing together the collaboration between schools and vocational rehabilitation state agencies. Many of your voc rehab counselors may have already been connected to your schools, but this really builds on this collaboration. The most important part of WIA is that it requires the vocational rehabilitation agency to spend 15% of their entire VR annual budget on Pre-ETS. That is meant for students still in school. This is significant and has greatly impacted already many of the connections that voc rehab has had with the schools. This connection really has increased opportunities and is already resulting in very positive outcomes for students. So our Attainment Company's Pre-ETS solution is really a one-stop solution for you. And basically it provides all of the information you need for the 5 required activities. We divided out our curriculum by the 5 required activities. 1 through 5 was listed based on what was put into the WIOA Pre-ETS legislation. So we followed that same sequence. So the first one is job and career exploration. We also divided the lessons into explore, apply, extend. And you'll be able to see here that we have explore, which chapters and lessons are included in that, and then apply and extend. I'll explain more about that later in this session. So basically, this lists all the chapter and lessons for our number 1 career and job and career exploration. We start some of the lessons with an assessment. This particular one is the Picture Vocational Interest Inventory. You will see assessments embedded throughout the lessons within each of the 5 Pre-ETS. We included topics such as looking at your current labor market, what are some non-traditional employment options, and then bringing in guest speakers. One of the activities we also included was actually providing you a list of potential questions students might ask, and also an example of a letter inviting a guest speaker to your class. We tried to provide everything you might need so that it would be able to allow the teacher to spend more time working with the students in the classroom. So here is chapter 4 through 9. Again, we look at skills ability profiler. What are the skills needed for particular careers? We looked at what student organizations are going on within your school. It's really important. How are you including speakers from those student organizations and creating an inclusive environment for students to participate in these organizations, to learn more about careers, and also to network. We looked at what are some ways to match skills with jobs In the end, it's really important that we look at the person's skills, aptitudes, interests, passions, and that can help lead a person to a job that would have higher interest. And then what are in-demand jobs locally? In the end, finding a job, you're going to need to know what's available in your communities. Often students with disabilities may not actually move out of their communities, so it's particularly important to know what's available. So the second Pre-ETS is work-based learning. We start this one as well with an assessment. We're assessing work relevant skills. Here we look at on-the-job skills. This is actually what would it take to be out in a job? What kind of checklists might you need? How would you break down a task analysis? What is the role of the skills trainer or a job coach when they're providing support in the workplace? How do you really support independence at the work by the students? What are some opportunities for competitions in careers? And then informational interviews. I provide a great deal of information in the professional development on our flash drive, ideas of what would be informational interviews that you could do and attending career fairs. We also look at apprenticeships and internships, service learning, and then just basic foundations of what would you need for academics for employment. Especially certain types of careers require certain types of training. And then looking at job shadowing opportunities. You can see now we're in the extend part of the lessons from 8 to 10. This is actually based more out in the community. And then mentorship, of course, the importance of mentorship. And in our professional development activities, we included how do you build a mentorship program within your school. The third Pre-ETS is post-secondary training. Here we're looking at how to prepare for a job and getting additional training. And part of WIOA is looking now at how is vocational rehabilitation supporting additional training once a student leaves high school. And it could be in college or 2-year, 4-year colleges, but it also could be developing credentials, especially in the healthcare field. So you want to look at what those opportunities are, and we talk about that in these lessons. We also look at the assistive technology that a student might use or might need, and then what are some of the introductions to the local services. Some of the students may be eligible for Medicaid long-term care. These are our chapter 1 through 3 is our Explore category. Now our Apply category is looking at, okay, what are some actual career pathways? How do we plan for college? What kind of modifications or accommodations might I need? And then just looking at what are some of your options post-secondary. The Extend then continues to have the student develop these skills of how do I make decisions? How do I know I'm providing informed consent? What are the community resources available to me in my community? And what do I mean by creating a summary of performance? Pre-ETS 4 is workplace readiness. Before you even get out on the job, it is really critically important that you have those soft skills that you need in order to be successful in employment. And so this has 2 books. There was so much material here that we felt it was really important to add additional materials. And this is all around independent living and job-seeking skills, and also just understanding your civic responsibility. As you can see, the Explore is chapter 1 through 4. Then in the Apply, we talk about the soft skills of interpersonal skills, communication. Often my experience has been that students or adults with disabilities may lose their jobs based on those social interactions versus actually knowing how to do a particular job. And then just understanding those independent living skills. They talk about financial literacy, we talk about health and safety, and again, knowing where your community resources are. And the Extend takes you out into the community. How do you collect applications? How do you interview? What's voting all about? How do you have some conflict resolution when you have in your interpersonal skills? And then money management again, and then just adults' rights and responsibilities and understanding those. Number 5 is self-advocacy. This is really a critical area, and in our Explore and Apply area, we really talk about recognizing your strengths. What is your disability? What are my challenges? What are my barriers to employment? How do I talk more positively about myself? How could I be a mentor for someone, or how can I find a mentor? And then here we talk about, what about my IEP? How do I actually not just participate in IEP, but maybe direct and self-direct that IEP? And then talking about how I look at solutions to any kind of challenging problems. And then really setting goals. What are my goals for both educational performance? What are my goals for post-secondary education? And just taking a leadership role in your IEP. So these are the 6 student workbooks. You will receive all 6 in spiral bound, but we also give 10 consumable workbooks for each one. So that's an additional 60 consumable books. These can also be purchased online as well. The lessons are definitely designed with multiple activities and homework. We're going to show you that. And it is divided by explore, apply, extend, as I had pointed out. And the worksheets and lessons are really described well on what to do in the instructor's guide. So here's the instructor's guide. So it includes a basic overview of WIOA and Pre-ETS, and then we talk about what's included in these materials. But each unit, which is each Pre-ETS, includes a chapter overview. We have chapters that have vocabulary words. I'll give you lesson examples of those. And we have PowerPoints as well. And then each Pre-ETS chapters, we have anywhere between 8 and 11, and then we have lessons within those chapters. The lessons are going to be organized as you will see. We talk about what materials you need, what will be instruction. We give scripted instruction through every single lesson. We provide learning objectives, as you will see, and we'll talk about more of this. And then we provide a really interesting and exciting app, which is called Go Worksheet Maker. We included worksheets already pre-made to fit lessons within the Pre-ETS unit, but this worksheet maker can be used for any worksheet. You might have a general education worksheet, you might have worksheets already in your classroom, and you can create them to be digitized. So basically, by taking a picture of that worksheet, you can then create a digital interactive worksheet that can be done on the iPad. That's included. Our flash drive, you're going to get a flash drive that's loaded with everything. We have all those professional development resources. How do you organize a career day? How do you map out your community? How do you make a checklist? What is a task analysis for job coaching? How do you engage employers and do systematic instruction? So there's a variety of topics that you will find in your professional development resources. You will also have PowerPoints. We have PowerPoints on the flash drive for lesson content, and we have vocabulary PowerPoints for every chapter. You'll again get the 6 spiral bound student workbooks. You'll get the 60 consumable workbooks, but all of those workbooks also are on the flash drive. You can print out individual pages as you need them. We have an assessment manual and score sheets that are included. I'll be showing you those. Pre and post assessments are on the flash drive, and I'll explain that. And then we have additional resources to print that's on a PDF of all the worksheets that you will be needing for each of the lessons. And that's because we're including additional attainment products. We also included pre-made communication overlays for the Go Talk 20 and the Go Talk 32, or for whichever communication that you may use for students needing alternative communication devices. So the assessment manual package includes these 8 assessments, and each of those, as I said, were embedded into the actual lesson for each of the 5 Pre-ETS. We also are including an assistive technology profile, or the AT profile. This book is really critically important, where you document all the assistive technology a student may be using, so that can, once the student leaves high school, they'll be able to take that information on with them into the adult service system. We also have an Assessment Plus app included. This is the second app that's included in this Pre-ETS Solution package. And this app will help you to digitize and manage student information. The 8 assessments we've included that will be part of this digitization of collecting data. The flash drive includes all of the assessments, answer sheets, summary sheets, score sheets, as well as the pre and post assessments. And as I had mentioned, these additional resources are included. This includes Explore Social Skills. We have a microwave cookbook that's part of this package, Exploring Your Community, Health Advocacy, We already talked about the assistive technology profile. Whose future is it? Talks about how students can participate in their IEP and future planning. Exploring your budget for financial literacy, safety skills. We have scripted role plays, opportunities for students, life skills stories, how life skills align to academics, living on your own survival guide, and then personal care for both men and women's survival guide. And we'll have a reference guide too as well, and I'll talk about that. This is all included in this Pre-ETS package. Every one of these books, the particular pages that relate to the lessons are included in that flash drive. So how will you use these materials? I think I've mentioned already that these are the 5 Pre-ETS. I've talked about explore, apply, and extend. And basically, explore is the beginning, building some basic knowledge about each of the 5 units. Apply now is applying that knowledge and skill in a more of a school environment. And then extend brings that learning out into the community. So the units are divided into chapters, and we have lessons under each of the chapters. So where do you start? There's a variety of ways to use this curriculum, and it will depend on your own school and how your student population is organized and how your classrooms are organized. So we look at the potential of use of this as the explore chapters would be done in middle school. The high school would be using the apply chapters, and then the 18 to 21 transition students would be using the extend. But I think you're going to find that a lot of the materials, really starting with explore, apply, extend, could be used for all ages of students. And especially the transition students will want to have the information starting with explore. The pre and post assessments then will be able to tell you information about where the student is at before the lesson begins. Often this might be from observation that you may have had of the student to know whether it's going to be 1, 2, 3, or 4. It might be observations from others or some assessment tools you may have already used in your classroom. At the end of each chapter, you would then do a post assessment looking at 1 through 4 and their knowledge of those objectives at that time. These pre and post assessments are also included on the flash drive, and in our newer version of the assessment manual, you will see them at the end of the assessment manual as well. So here's the decision about how to teach. So you've got explore, apply, extend, and you might decide that you're going to do all of the Pre-ETS units 1 through 5 explore lessons first. Then you'll go through apply, then extend. You might decide that you're going to do it based on educational level, explore, apply, extend, or you might decide that you're going to do Pre-ETS Unit 1. You're going to teach all 3 sections. You'll teach all of Pre-ETS 1, explore, apply, through extend. And that will be totally individualized based on how your school district would like to be implementing the Pre-ETS solution. So the instruction is well suited to weekly instruction of about an hour. You could also look at each lesson in sequential order, but one of the things we talked about is a suggested order that we would give. The 1 through 5, as I said earlier, was based on how WIOA put that into the legislation. But the actual order of teaching, we believe, would be better looked at this way. We think that self-advocacy would be a great start for students, and then you move into job and career exploration, because that is actually looking at how you're looking at what potential careers you might have. Then workplace readiness is really about developing those soft skills and understanding how to have a checklist for checking how you're doing with hygiene or dressing. Then we would see the work-based learning. Now you're ready to go out into the community to do your job. And then lastly, what additional training might you need? So if we were actually organizing it, this is the order we would have put the Pre-ETS. And again, it can be up to your own school district. If you were doing daily instruction, we do look at each of the lessons. It's about an hour, 45 minutes to an hour. Sometimes it can be more, depending on the activity. So it's possible you want to teach all 5 Pre-ETS each day of the week. So you would start with the pre-lesson, which is the vocabulary, and then you'd move to lesson 1. That might be one way of teaching, or you might decide that you're going to do all of chapter 1 for Pre-ETS 1, all of chapter 1 for Pre-ETS 2, all of chapter 1 for Pre-ETS 3, 4, and 5, example. And then you'd go back and start with chapters 2. So it's really dependent, and maybe you decide to do all of Pre-ETS 1 first and all of 2, 3, 4, and 5. So we also wanted you to know that the Pre-ETS is color-coded. So we always want to make sure that when you're opening up, you see right at the bottom of every page, it's going to tell you which Pre-ETS you're working on. This one is Pre-ETS 2 Work-Based Learning. It's in Explore Chapter 2 Overview. So green, this one happens to be teal, so I know it's Pre-ETS 2. Pre-ETS 1 is green, Pre-ETS 2 teal, Pre-ETS 3 purple, Pre-ETS 4 orange, and Pre-ETS 5 blue. So those are the colors, and that's the matching colors for all the activities that you'll see, the books and other resources. And a chapter gives you an overview. So you always have a chapter overview, and in that chapter overview, it will explain to you instruction. It shows you the pre-instruction, which lessons there are that are a part of that chapter. It gives you materials. Whenever it says focus on, that means that's the student workbook. Focus on job and career exploration. And then it tells that you're going to be using pages 17 through 40 of that particular book for this chapter. And then this particular chapter has 2 PowerPoints. We again tried to make this a complete package for a teacher. She didn't, or he didn't even have to create their own PowerPoints. But we did put the PowerPoints on the flash drive so you can add additional slides if you would like in those PowerPoints. We looked at additional resources to print. Those are always on the flash drive. These are pages from those 13 attainment products that we talked about, those additional transition products. We actually pulled the pages you would need for this particular chapter, and you can find that on the flash drive. And then we provide extra material. Is there other opportunities, other materials that might be in assistance to this particular lesson? And as you can see here, we put pictures here. Here's the picture of the book, and you're going to be using the scripted role plays. These are the PowerPoints. And we talk about take it further. This always means that if students have already shown that they can meet all of the Explore skills in 1, 2, and 3, then they would be able to continue on to apply, which are chapters 4, 5, 6, and 7, just so you know that. And then we include learning objectives. We always include learning objectives of every single overview. And then we give an IEP goal. You can tell this is written by a teacher because we wanted to make sure that there were learning objectives and IEP goals for every single chapter. In this particular chapter, as all chapters, there are vocabulary words and vocabulary lessons. You'll always get a vocabulary PowerPoint, and you're going to get student worksheets that you can print out. They are scaffolded for the individual student skills. Let me show you. You can see here is a lesson plan with vocabulary, the picture, and a sentence. So here's the word, the definition, there's always a picture, and then a sentence that's included. But we've scaffolded these worksheets so that there's worksheets for every single student that may have, here's one that talks about just highlighting keywords. Here's one that you would match a picture, pick out the picture that meets that particular word and definition. Some students might be able to write sentences on their own, and the far right worksheet would be for students that can actually write the definition and a sentence based on the word and the picture. So we attempted to provide every single vocabulary lesson with these scaffold worksheets. We have assessments. As I said earlier, we have 8 assessments in our assessment manual, and so we show how the assessments are used within each of the 5 Pre-ETS activities. This particular one is Pre-ETS that shows the Explore Chapter 2, and in here you see from the assessment manual, complete the employment assessment as part of the discovery process. We talk about how you would use that. In this, under materials, we say here you want to use the independent living assessment. So the assessments are used directly within the lessons. Here's some more examples of lessons that show matching skills with jobs. This is Pre-ETS 1. In our Extend category, Chapter 9, Lesson 1, this will show you Focus On is the student workbook, which pages. Here's a website that you will be using. Here's the scripted lessons for the students. And we often show extension activities as well that might be able to add for students. Maybe not all students would be completing those. And then here is Document It, looking at ways to document the information. And you see the scripted lessons again. You see the Bring It to Life. Not every lesson has this, but we have recommendations of ways that you can utilize ideas from the community for that particular lesson. The independent practice is divided by school and home. Here's additional activities that would support the lessons, and then also activities that you can send home. Either you can send the student workbook home, or because the student workbook is on the flash drive, you could send just that particular page home. And then here's an example of professional development activities. So on the flash drive, you will find community mapping as an example. When you're looking at career and job exploration, what are some of the opportunities within your community? And so it explains how to go about developing a community map. And then we include websites at the end of every single, most all lessons that enhance that lesson and provide additional information for the teacher. I wanted to show you another example of the instructor's guide, and this shows how we have additional extension activities. These are under additional resources to print, as I had mentioned. So you will go on the flash drive under additional resources under Pre-ETS 4, and this says pages 28 through 32 are additional activities that students can do, especially some who move through their lessons more quickly, and those can be found on that flash drive. This talks about documenting it again, independent practice. I think I explained that, school and home, and here's some additional professional development. This actually is a YouTube video to show students. So we always add so many additional resources for you to do each of these lessons. Here's another Bring It to Life example. Here's the student workbook for Pre-ETS 3. And at the beginning of every workbook, you're going to find the contents of that particular workbook, and you can see the topics. And we've also divided by Explore, Apply, and Extend as well. Here's another example of a student workbook. These are pages that show an example of what a task completion might look like and helping students learn and understand those checklists. Here's an example of our communication overlays. This one happens to be talking about arriving at school. This one's on developing your transition plan. We have some of the communication overlays that are also specifically targeted to a particular topic. So for example, we had one on informational interviews. So a student that needs some type of assistance in communication can use the overlay that we use for talking to a potential employee of another company to learn more about that business. Here's another example. So you finished now teaching, and this talks about the final assessment. When you finish teaching a chapter, you're going to have given that student 1 through 4 for that particular student. And so now you're going to look at the 1 through 4 and doing a post-assessment to determine how well they gain the knowledge and if you need some reteaching or teaching using different activities. Here's a reference guide that we also included in the package. And many of the packages that we included, the attainment products, are used in the lessons under each of the 5 Pre-ETS. Some of these attainment products have software included, apps included, CDs. To fully utilize these materials, we determined that we wanted to show you additional lessons. So you may have a student that in that chapter 1, they felt they finished the work, and now you want to add some additional tasks for that student. Well, here are all the lessons and specific pages that we recommend from the additional transition products. We did not use these lessons in that Chapter 1 lesson under Pre-ETS 1, as you can see on the bottom, Job and Career Exploration. So these are additional sheets, and we have this for all 5 of the Pre-ETS. Again, another resource for you to be able to enhance the lessons. So we also have a blog, as you can see here, on our attainmentcompany.com website. If you want to learn more about WIOA and the law that started all of this, and also to understand the 5 pre-employment transition service activities that are required, my blog talks about that as well. So you may want some additional training. This was really meant as an overview, and so more specific training, you may want to, if you're a school district, you already know your attainment company account manager for additional training, contact them. You could also contact information here at Attainment or myself. If you're a vendor from of a vocational rehabilitation Pre-ETS, I am happy to help you to get through and understand this Pre-ETS Solution curriculum. So you're welcome to contact me. And then some of the classroom teachers, maybe you would like to talk directly to Whitney Fowler, who was a classroom teacher and up until just last year. So she can give you a lot of information about the lessons, as she wrote many of the lessons that are included in the Pre-ETS Solution. I want to thank you for taking the time with us today to learn more about the Pre-ETS Solution. This curriculum will offer everything that you would need to meet the WIOA 5 required activities. If you need any additional information, please feel free to contact us. And thank you so much for listening.